Hello and welcome to Perspective Exchange, where we debate the recent relevant topics of the world from one side and also from the other. My name is Andrew Dunn. I am a leftist progressive. You might even call me a democratic socialist. With me is my co-host, Joe Pangaro. Tell the people a little bit about yourself, Joe.
Andrew, it's nice to be here. What we're going to try and do is we're going to try and cover both sides of the argument. We're going to make our cases and let everyone decide. So I'm Joe Pangaro. I spent a career in law enforcement. I am a conservative, traditional American. I believe in the red, white, and blue, God and family.
Great. Our first topic today, why don't we just kick this off right away, is, of course, the biggest topic in the news right now. It's got to be Greenland. Trump and Putin, two BFFs having a tiff, and both are eyeing Greenland for its strategic military position, even though its population is completely against any new ownership, many of whom have been sporting hats that say, quote, "Make America go away." But Trump has been unwavering, constantly and perpetually threatening to take this body of land, which begs the question, is there a type of body that Trump won't try to grab? To prepare for a potential U.S. invasion, other countries have been sending soldiers to Greenland as a sign of strength and solidarity. These countries include France, Norway, and even Germany, who, after hearing the U.S. just invaded one country and is looking at taking over another, probably said, "Oh, wow, look, it's a new guy." All I can hope is that after hearing the reasoning behind this, that we have to invade Greenland so Russia doesn't do it first, some of his supporters ask, are we the baddies? This is like robbing a bank to make sure no one steals the money, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I have to say, I think there's a bigger picture to all of this than just breaking it down to, anti-Trump or Trump's going to invade. I think the reality is the world situation, the way it's going now, it's very, very clear. There are enemy forces out there that do not see the world the way we do. Not everything is America. Not everything is let's do it fair. And I think you're going to see this is a strategic piece of property in the world that at some point, if there is something bad that happens, we're going to be called to defend it anyway. The United States is always the one who has to come in and save the world. We've done it many times. And I can see that in the future, maybe not tomorrow, but Americans, we look at things, for next Thursday. The Russians, the Chinese, our enemies, they look 50, 60, 70 years down the road. And we're losing our will to be strong in the world. So what I see here happening is that while we might see this as an individual event, Trump wants to invade and take it over. Trump wants to protect the United States and North America from an influx of these enemy countries that want to come in and have bases or have situations in the opening sea lanes there that they can control. And then we have to go to a hot war to get them out of there, as opposed to going in there now, right? Make the life better for everybody. And I'm between whether or not we should take it over or if we should work with them and have much more of a presence there. But the reality is, if we don't, one of our enemies is going to go there eventually.
Yeah, this to me feels a lot like the abduction of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, where they had said, it's for the greater good. It's because this guy is a ruthless dictator. He's harming the people. And then later he's like, wow, they had a lot of oil. We're trying to work with Exxon. This also feels very similar to me for a few reasons. One, we know that Greenland has a ton of minerals, including natural earth metals. We also know that, for starters, there's the Defense of Greenland Treaty of 1951, which says we can just put as many soldiers on Greenland as we want. So if we're concerned about a possible Russian or Chinese appearance or presence taking over Greenland, we can just put as many soldiers there as we want without having to take over Greenland or purchase it or whatever we need to do. Additionally, there is NATO, which, like you said, we often have been. We have the biggest military in the entire world. So when NATO needs to step in, a large part of that is going to be the U.S. stepping in. But it is 30-something countries that will also be helping the U.S. at least a little bit to be able to strong arm another country and say, hey, if you do this, we're going to step in. We're going to stop you. So for me, I do understand the best compliment I can give this. And it's the best compliment I can give to Trump about this. And it's something I've been thinking about for a while. I've seen a lot of the left call him stupid for this. I don't think it's stupid, meaning I see a lot of people who are like, the other side of the US is right next to Russia. So what do we care about Greenland? I get it. I've seen people showcase the map online and talk about, well, here's why it's an important presence in between these other countries. So I don't think it's silly to be concerned of an antagonistic force stepping in and taking Greenland if we don't. That being said, I really don't think we need to take over Greenland, even from a diplomatic point of view, where we're like, hey, let's work together and you just give us Greenland or we'll buy it or whatever. We can barely afford to feed the people who live in this country, let alone purchase an entire country.
Well, I think we're going to find out as we go down, and I appreciate your point of view there about Trump is not a stupid man. He says things that are...
I didn't say that.
No, well, I'm going to say he's not a stupid man.
Okay.
When you think about the deals that he makes, the things that he says, sometimes he says things that are caustic or he says things off the cuff, and it causes him problems.
Yeah.
But there's a plan that he's going for. And a lot of the things that he says it specifically to get a rise out of people. Now, here we have, you mentioned all of these countries in NATO, they're sending troops to Greenland to prevent us from going there. They have a war in Europe, and they won't do anything to protect Ukraine, but they're going to come over here and stop Trump. I think this is really an evidence of Trump derangement syndrome. They just don't like this guy, and they're going to stand together for this. But here you have Putin attacking a country in Europe that could potentially lead to World War III.
Yeah.
And they're all backing off. We don't know what we're going to give them because we don't want to upset Russia. They do everything to protect themselves. And if we think if something broke out, they would actually send troops and whatnot to help us, that I'm concerned about.
So to be clear, I think the reason they're not helping Ukraine, and anyone can make an argument that this is the real reason or not, but Ukraine, part of Russia's strong arming with the Ukraine prevented the Ukraine from getting into NATO. So that's part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? Is that anyone messes with one of us, they mess with all of us. And Ukraine isn't in that organization, but Greenland is. So I think that's part of the reason. I hear you on the sort of hypocritical nature of that, of, well, why this country but not that one? And look, I agree with you. I think Ukraine deserves as much help as anyone, but at the same time, we're the people who are like, we're supposed to be the people stopping the bullies. And we're supposed to have this attitude of like, hey, Maduro, quit hurting your people. Putin, quit hurting your people, quit hurting Ukraine. Anyway, we're going to go. And to be fair, we have not said, yes, we're invading Greenland. But Trump did say he's going to do it either the easy way or the hard way, which is what mob bosses say.
They do. And I think that is part of a negotiating tactic that you kind of put out this message. And what does that message exactly say? Easy way or the hard way? He hasn't said, I'm going to send troops over there and wipe out the fishing villages that are there and take over. He's throwing a message out there that says, I'm going to do this. I think I need to do it. And that might push people who are standing back saying, we shouldn't do this. I don't know if we want to do this. Maybe we want to do it. Gee, this guy's really serious. Maybe we better negotiate. I think that is a tactic that, you think, look at this. Look at a street fight. You've been in a bar, right? Adult beverages. I'm sure you've been there once or twice. I know I have.
Yeah, a couple times.
You go in there and you bump somebody. And what happens? The two sides turn at each other. And what do? Hey, I'll kick your butt. Because you're feeling each other out. You're trying to figure out, am I going to swing here?
That is not what my
swing?
Experience at the bar was like, but continue.
But my point is that you sit there and you're trying to feel this other person out. Well, I think some of the things that Trump says are designed specifically to see the reaction that he gets. We're seeing a reaction. He said this, and these NATO countries are gonna send troops there. Absolutely not. This will never happen. Well, people are backing themselves into a pretty serious corner by saying this will never, ever happen. And then 2 weeks from now, we find out that the people there go, gee, Denmark doesn't do much for us. This guy's going to give us $200,000 each. We'll have protection. Maybe we want to do this, and then it changes. So I think it's all a bargaining technique because I think there's a much bigger picture for this and, going after Maduro. There's a bigger picture in where America belongs in this new modern world of danger. Sitting back, being Chamberlain, waving a piece of paper, that didn't work the last time, and it's not going to work this time. The people we're up against, they will kill you if they see weakness, and we have been weak. So we're showing some strength. Who else is going to show that
against
strength.
Greenland.
Well, no, it's not against Greenland. Greenland is the object.
Sure. I
It's
hear
the
you.
Russians, the Chinese, and
Yeah.
these other countries that are gauging, gee, Trump has he sets out a line, and I think we all know now, whether you agree with him or not, if he says, I'm going to do this, and you push him, he's going to do it. Now, you can argue the wisdom of what he does, but if he says he's going to do it, you can take that to the bank. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you as well that like there is something to be said about, because this whole thing started when reporters were like, hey, you've shown interest in Greenland. Is that something, I think they worded it as like, are you willing to put on record now that you will not use force to take Greenland? And he just said, well, no, because who knows what's going to happen in 6 months or a year or whatever. And from then people were like, all the media was like, well, Trump says he might use force to take Greenland. And then he's like, oh, okay, so I hear you on testing it out. But I think also what he does is he's a deal maker. He knows how to, that's his whole shtick. So I think part of making a deal is everything's on the table. And so if Greenland says like, well, you're not going to invade us, are you? You're like, well, I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, even though realistically, Trump is probably not going to invade Greenland. One of the things that concerns me, I'll put out 3 concerns. And they're questions that I've been going through in my head since this whole thing has been ramping up over the past couple of weeks. If they say no, because as of now, the people do not want this, the politicians do not want this, and if they say no, and we do decide to try to take Greenland by force, should NATO try to stop us? Because that is kind of the whole point of NATO, is if there's a country in NATO that doesn't want to be invaded and another country is invading them, the rest of the countries go to stop that other country. Additionally, what will our relationship be with NATO after that happens? And is this the end of NATO? Because Trump has already been on thin ice with NATO, or rather NATO's been on thin ice with Trump, because we are paying more, which admittedly, we have more money to pay. We have a bigger military presence. It seems to me like that makes sense, but he's unhappy with that. I see that point as well. I see that side of things. But without the U.S., is there a NATO?
There is not. There's
Right.
not a NATO without the...
Which concerns me, because I think it's a good idea, whether it's working or not. I think NATO is, I think we need like a large amount of countries to agree, hey, if anybody messes with one of us, they mess with all of us.
I 100% agree with that. And the concept of that is what is really, that's the power. That enemies of us will go, wow, we're not just fighting Germany, we're fighting all of NATO. The problem we have is that the members of NATO, other than the United States, I don't know that you can count on them. That's really the problem. If I was rock solid that, you know what, if something happened, these people are all in,
If
and
you
we're
got
all
into that
together.
bar fight and all those other countries were behind you, you'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Right?
you say, okay, so what's going on here?
Yeah.
I don't know that we can trust them. And I think, Trump demanding that they pay more, well, why weren't they paying more? The whole thing is, if something happened in Europe, which is likely where things are going to happen, that's where it's happened many times before, we're going to be sending young men and women over there who are going to bleed and die on battlefields crying for their mothers as we're paying for all this, and they didn't want to ante up enough. Why is it? And I get it. There is a responsibility we have for our own safety to make sure Europe is not ridden over. But the reality is they should be the first ones standing up saying we will fight anything or anybody that thinks they're going to make a move here. And I just don't know that when push comes to shove, that they're really going to do it. So it's funny that they all go run into Greenland to stop Trump, but I don't know that they would actually fight in Europe because they've seen it before. They've been afraid. And I want to touch on your other question that you had there. What would happen? Would NATO, and you're right, I guess by treaty, if Trump decided to send troops in there, they are supposed to fight back anyone who tries to attack a NATO country. Would they? I don't know that they would. Think of how absurd that would be for all of us, for the good guys to fight themselves.
About as absurd as the U.S. invading Greenland.
Exactly. And I think you're probably right. I can't see a hot invasion. Now, we have bases there, right? We already have bases
one.
there. We have one base there.
Yeah.
So what if Trump was to say, you know what, we're pulling 100,000 troops out of these 7 bases, and you're all going to go to that base.
Yeah.
And we're going to build
I think
barracks.
part of that treaty, as well as we can make more bases if we want to.
Right.
There was a time, we currently have 200 soldiers in Greenland. There was a time where we had up to 10,000 at a time.
Right. So if he was to pour troops in there without firing a shot and then say, well, this base isn't big enough, we're going to put what you encircle the whole place. And then you, for all intents and purposes, you have the place. Economically, there's a lot of resources there that could be developed that are not being developed. Now, Denmark is in no position to develop them. The people who live there, they're in no position to develop the resources that could transform their lives.
The real issue
but
about
the United
that
States
as well,
could.
sorry to cut you off, but the real issue of that as well is that they don't want to, is that there are rules that country has put in place saying we don't want to do this. It's about respect to the land, it's about indigenous cultures, and about smog and machinery being in a country, and they don't want that there. How much of that should we respect?
Well, right now it's their country. We should respect it. But what I see is that we may do the right thing again, and we'll respect all of that. But another enemy is not going to respect. They're not going to care less whether or not that there's wind farms or whether or not they don't have pollution. They're going to say there's rare earth minerals there, and we need them, and we're going to go take them. Now what do you do, right?
Yeah.
So America has not been the bad guy in the world. Now we might have done things that people aren't happy with, but we've not been the bad guy. If we go in there, it's going to transform their lives. The minerals will come out, the oil will come out, their lives would be better, but it might not be what they want. And I get that. And that's why you negotiate. And I think all of this commentary, the things that he's saying are all to really shake the pot, see where it comes out, and make a deal.
Yeah, I still am not super sure why we're not just, okay, we need more soldiers there, let's just put as many soldiers there as we want, since that seems to be the excuse, or the explanation, I should say. Part of me worries that a big part of this is distraction, and I don't know from what, maybe, and I hate to even throw this out here because it is such a hot topic, especially amongst the left, but the Epstein files or something, it just feels like such an odd thing to say, well, we have the ability, we have a deal already where we can put as many soldiers as we want on Greenland, but in order to put as many soldiers as we want on Greenland, I need it.
Yep. Well, there could be, as we've seen, and when you deal with people all the time, there's what we see out front, and there could be ulterior motives, there could be ego involved, there could be many different things, positive and negative. But the reality is, who does that message go to besides the fishing villages in Greenland and the kings and queens in Denmark who are doing nothing? Who else hears that message? I'm going to take it. Right? Our enemies hear that. Does that force their hand to maybe start moving, which now we see what their plans are, right? I think that's a possibility. And to play world geopolitics, we can't just look at this little spot on the earth and say, it's all about that, because I don't think it is. I think these things are much, much bigger. Well, we are a global community now, and our enemies are everywhere, and we have to see it. It's not simple as it used to be.
Yeah, I will add that the U.S. Ambassador John Bolton, who, I cannot remember what his title was before under the Trump administration. I think Secretary of Defense? I think that's what he was. Sorry if I'm wrong. But he said in an interview recently that attempting to take Greenland is, quote, Trump's worst move yet. Let me ask you this. This is a topic that I've been waiting to bring up on this is a subtopic, I guess, I've been waiting to bring up on our over topic. Did you see the tweet that Trump sent, supposedly, allegedly, to the Prime Minister of Greenland?
Refresh me, because there's so many tweets. It
just happened yesterday, I think. Or sorry, not a tweet. It was a text, I think. I don't know. Whatever. It's he said, quote, considering your country, or it was to Denmark. It was Norway. The Prime Minister of Norway. Trump said to him, quote, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace. And I don't, that clearly wasn't a public message, or it wasn't going to be, right, until someone released it. So when you're talking about maybe us just talking about invading Greenland is going to make it so our adversaries go, oh, maybe we shouldn't, or maybe we should try, and then we've got insight or whatever. It is so strange to me that this text goes out. And I don't know what to make of it. And I don't know if you, right off the top of your head, know what to make of it.
I'm going to tell you, I don't know what to make of it either, and that's why I said sometimes, this is not a guy that is sleeping 18 hours a day. This guy goes day and night. He's constantly thinking. He's talking to people. He's having meetings. He's got the energy of 10 people. It's amazing to actually watch that go on. Would I have sent a message like that? I don't know. What does he mean? I don't know. But it certainly, I think all the people that hear these things and sit there and do exactly that, what you and I are saying, what the heck is he talking about, kind of puts that into perspective, that when he says something, you're not really exactly sure what he might do.
Yeah. This for me is just, it's so embarrassing as a country. There are so many things he does. And I get that, like, the right has this notion that the reason he does these things is because he's showing that he's making them suspect that he's dumber than he is, or whatever. It's all part of the strategy. He's playing 3D chess, 4D chess, 5D chess. He's playing all the chesses. But it is hard for me to get on board. I'm reminded of, I don't know if you've seen the movie, the Glass Onion, the second Knives Out movie. There's a part where Benoit Blanc, who's a detective, discovers what's going on, and it's just the dumbest thing ever. And he goes, "It's so dumb." And someone else goes, "So dumb, it's brilliant." And he goes, "No, it's just dumb." And sometimes I wonder, is this so dumb it's brilliant, or is it just dumb? And that's the issue that I have with a lot of the stuff that the Trump administration does from time to time, because is there an argument to be made that, like, this is part of some higher level of understanding and strategy that I cannot begin to comprehend? Sure, man. But, like, saying, hey, the reason that I don't want peace is because you didn't give me the Nobel Peace Prize is pretty damning, in my opinion.
Well, I got to tell you, it sounds like it doesn't make any sense. He was bothered by that Nobel Peace Prize. And here's a guy, now here's where you have the human being part of him. Here's a guy that comes along, feels he was done wrong in elections, feels he was done wrong by the media, feels he was done wrong, but he came back. He made it back, the greatest comeback in political history. And now he's thinking, okay, the first time around was a fluke, but here I am. I'm going to do things, and I'm just surmising here. We know he has an ego, right? All of us have an ego to certain degrees. And here he is, and he still can't get anyone to go, well, you did solve 7 wars, but those wars don't count. They're small wars. They're not really big wars. Anybody else could have solved them too. Like, he can't get any credit. And to say a thing like that, because you didn't give me the Nobel Peace Prize, I can't say what that is at all. Like I said, would I have said a thing like that? I don't know that I would have
probably
said that.
Probably not. I get it too, because I understand it from the Nobel Peace Prize side, where, like, we're talking about how this guy is just sort of ruminating on invading Greenland. Like, it's very hard to justify. He makes it very hard to justify, even if I don't even know what wars he's talking about. But sure, man, let's say he did all this. It's very hard to justify when he's ousting Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, which maybe that's for the best, but also it's, like, very aggressive. And again, maybe it is for peace, but it reminds me as well of the George Orwell, the 1984 quote about peace is war, or something like that. It's something similar to that, about how the only way to get peace is through war. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I do want to add as well the additional tariffs on the other countries. I don't know if you've heard about this. He's put an additional, I think, 10% tariffs on the countries that are supporting Greenland. I constantly feel with this administration that it is perpetually and constantly isolationist, where alienating Canada, who is now working with China, I believe, more on trade. We're raising the prices on the people who are trying to work with us. And for the deal maker, it seems very, very hard for me to, and again, maybe this is just that 7D chess that I just can't wrap my head around, but it feels like the rest of the world is leaving us behind while we close our doors.
And you know what? That certainly could be an outcome. It could. But the reality is, and I don't want to say this cavalierly, but who needs who more? The rest of the world needs us more than we need them. Our market is the #1 market in the world. They want to sell their products into America. They want America to pump money into their governments. They want America to protect them and keep them alive. They need us more than them. That's the reality. And there's a time that you stand up. We're just so used to the last 10 administrations, basically going so far and then backing off, going so far and never being stronger. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a power hand, but at some point you have to stand up and say, I'm the biggest dog in the room, and I don't like the way things are. It's not fair. It's not right. And we're going to change the rules now. You want these benefits, then you're going to play the game by the rule maker. And because you're the biggest and baddest, you get to make the rules. And again, when you say that, it can sound tough. But when has America gone in and taken people's stuff? We fought back our bitterest enemies, and then we rebuilt them. This is what America does. But if we're going to be the leaders, leadership is not always easy. Leadership, sometimes you have to be very strong, and people who want to fight against the leader, if they're better, then their ways will win. If they're not better, then they should get in line and say, okay, you are the leader. How do we work this out for all of our benefits? And I think that is the game changer that Trump is. We haven't seen someone like him for very, very many years. And I don't think that he is a commonality. I don't think we're going to see another one of him for a while. And could that mean everything just goes back? Everybody's comfortable. Europe doesn't pay. Everyone hangs out. Russia does what they want. China keeps taking over. And America will apologize for the Trump years. Sorry we were so strong. And what's that going to do for us? Is that going to help us, my family, your family, be safe and go into the future the way we should? Or is that going to cause bigger problems for us down the road that we have to deal with? You know, the rest of the world is not America. You know, we kind of get caught in this bubble that, hey, if everyone is just fair and everyone does right and you talk nice to people, it'll all work out. It's not how the world works. And I think Trump standing up and being strong is trying to reset the paradigm.
My big concern with that is that, you say we haven't seen someone like Trump for a long time. Using the words that you just used to describe him, I feel like I have seen someone just like him recently. And again, only in the words you used to describe him. But Vladimir Putin, who probably also feels the same way, where he's like, well, I need Greenland in order to secure my defense against these people who are who are a potential concern for me. And so I am always eager to try to look into the mind of the other person and try and, like, if we are both, first, I was going to say tread lightly, but carry a big stick. If we're both tread heavily and carry a big stick, does that not inevitably mean potential war? Like, are we going to go to war with Russia over this? If both of us are like, no, we're the toughest guy, you're not the toughest guy, I'm the toughest guy. All of a sudden, one of us is going through that bar window. And I don't know that I like the odds. I mean, will we win? Probably eventually if we go to war with Russia. But and I'm not saying we're doing that right now, but if we do take that mentality of like, we're the biggest and you all need to settle down and you need to cut this out and blah, 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 blah. That's my big concern, especially considering we just took out the president of one country. We're discussing invading another one that's a NATO ally. I am concerned about the future military conquests of our anti-war president.
Well, and I can appreciate all of that. And when I look at things and I look down the road, I try to look 30,000 feet and see it all. And could that lead to a conflict? Well, the difference between the words Trump uses as a strong leader, as someone who says, I'm the big dog and I'm going to make the rules, and Putin, who says, I'm the big dog and I'm going to make the rules. There is a difference in human nature between good and evil. Now, if the choice comes down, Trump is not going to kill and slaughter people so that he can regain an empire for America, where Putin will. He will destroy Europe, kill those people, and enslave them to bring back the Soviet Union. There is good and evil in the world. And Trump might be loud. He might be brash. It might be shaking things to the point that there could be conflict. But no matter what you think of him, he's not an evil man. He's America. Putin is an evil man who would kill you as quick as look at you if it served him. And we've seen him do it. He's bombing hospitals with babies in it to make his point because he wants that land back. Trump's not going to do that. At least I don't think he would. And if he did, I would have a big, big problem with that.
I would argue that we, under his administration and also under previous administrations, are sending military money to Israel, who is doing that in Palestine. But that's probably a topic for another time.
That's a whole nother topic. And again, you have to look at, the purposes of anything. And that's what I'm saying. When I hear what you're saying, yes, I have to look at the two and say, the second part of your concern is this taking us down a road where there might be a conflict, where there might be a hot conflict and people actually get killed and died, right? It could happen. If we do nothing and we take the weak position, do we not offer that up to our enemies? You're giving them your throat by saying, listen, we're not going to fight back. Then they're going to continue because what's the difference? They move forward. Does China move forward and take things? Does Russia move forward and take things? Yes. Does the United States? No.
I hear you. We are threatening to do that right now. And have we? No. Will we? Maybe. I don't know. But the other thing too is I still don't understand. Like, what we're talking about is ownership over another country. When a country that we have a treaty that allows us to put as many soldiers there as we want. So if that's really what the issue is, I don't understand why we're talking about purchasing Greenland when that money could be spent on Americans here, when we can just send people over there, especially the amount of money that it's going to cost to get the minerals that they're talking about is like billions and billions of dollars. They're talking about how we won't see the benefit or the profit of that over the next 100 years if we were to even do that. So for me, a lot of the struggle is like, okay, I hear you. If we don't show face, if we don't show we're strong, if we don't take strategic preliminary action, then we are putting ourselves at risk. So let's do that without threatening invading a NATO ally, without trying to purchase land that they do not want to sell. Nobody wants us there. So that's the issue for me. Is I'm like, I don't quite get why we're okay. He's saying, well, we might take Greenland by force for the purposes of showing Russia that we mean business. Okay, so just put 10,000 troops there. Just put 20,000 troops. Put however many people you want there. We can. I don't understand where the disconnect is with that.
Right. Well, here's what I can say. I made a comment before. I said, that's not something I would do. Well, if you were President Andrew, you would handle it in a different way.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just like we saw,
I'd be crying.
We've seen other presidents handle world affairs in different ways.
Yeah.
And you might not agree with what they're doing, but it worked out okay, or it didn't work out right. So this just happens to be the way this particular man at this particular time deals with things. Time is going to tell us whether or not he was right or wrong in the way he's voicing this. Now, what we look at is you can look at the historical record of something. When somebody comes forward, it's the first time they've ever stepped front and they're going to make a difference. You can say, well, you have no history for me to look at.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work out or not. When you look at Trump, he's done a lot of things that have made a lot of differences. Like I said, he says he's going to do it. He's going to do it. He puts lines in the sand. Don't cross the line. You're going to get hurt. Well, he's had successes in things we didn't think we could have successes in. And I don't know if this is the best way to negotiate this. I don't know exactly the best way we should go forward. But he's the guy who's there now. It's his turn at the table. And if it was President Andrew, you'd do it a different way.
Again, crying. I'd just be crying, probably in a puddle of urine. I would not be a happy president. The last concern I have about this, and then we can move on to the next topic, is something that I have found Trump does often enough that I have taken note, and it hasn't been super often. If it was, I think the press would talk about it more. But I've noticed that he sort of manufactures, and I don't know if it's intentional, but he manufactures a lot of his own military futures. And what I mean by that is, for example, getting us out of the Iran peace deal, which, again, that's another topic for another day. And then Iran's like, okay, so I guess we can make nukes. They make nukes. We bomb Iran to blow up those nukes that they're making. And I feel a similar way about NATO, where it's like, okay, he doesn't like NATO, and he has some maybe warranted grievances about NATO and about being part of NATO. So what are we doing? We're going to invade, potentially, a NATO ally, which again is creating like a future issue for him to potentially deal with later and maybe look good about. Maybe, is that the strategy? Is he just flying by the seat of his pants? Sometimes I feel like he's a dog chasing a tire. And it's just like what's in front of him right now is kind of all he's thinking about. I know that he doesn't have a huge history, I assume, with, military strategy and stuff like that. The dude was living in penthouses and working in real estate for most of his life, and then all of a sudden was thrown into the political game. But I wonder, that does concern me sometimes, thinking about how his current actions are setting up things for him to deal with later, either in a way that will make him look better or will make us look worse. And I get that saving face is a big part of being a politician, but it does concern me sometimes that he is making his own enemies. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Okay.
I understand. I get it.
I wasn't sure if I was explaining that super well.
I get what you're saying.
Again, I was focused on crying, and so who knows?
The man only has 3 years left, and then we're going to have to choose from the politicians that are left behind who's going to either take up the MAGA way and be strong, or if we're going to backpedal, we're going to get weak again. Who knows? We don't know. So he's got a very short amount of time to make differences, and I sit here in a chair here as just a regular American citizen, and I think about that guy who was a regular American citizen, maybe socioeconomically better than most of us, but the reality is he is now the most powerful man on the planet, and he has taken that seriously. So before, when I said, I wouldn't have said it this, and I find it funny that you would be crying and shaking. I look at it the other way. I say, if I was given the opportunity, I think I would be a very good president because I have my head clear. I'm strong. I'm not afraid. Sometimes you get your nose bloodied. Sometimes things happen. But here's this man, a regular man, is now the president of the United States. With that goes legacy. That goes responsibility. That goes so many things that you and I can look at him and say, well, that was a stupid thing to say. But at the same time, he's at the epicenter of the world and things that are going on. And he's trying to make the right decisions. And, military background, I think he surrounds himself, like all good leaders, with smart people. He's got generals that understand. I don't think he goes in and goes, well, I don't care. They got 1 million troops. I'm sending 5 Navy SEALs in. I think he would listen to them and come up with a bigger plan. What he would probably say, and I'm guessing, because this is what I would say, okay, my plan, my idea is not so good. You give me 3 different ways to do this. Then you're the experts. Figure it out and give it to me, and I'll decide. So I think what's going to happen down the road, is this going to be a new paradigm? Is this going to change things? Is it going to shake it up? I don't know, but what I do know is that the world we're in now is not going down a smooth path. We have bad people out there that are looking to expand what they do, and we are simply an obstacle. I have said for the longest time, I do a lot of writing and that, and I look at this and I go, the default position of humanity is to live under a tyrant, to live under a tyrannical leader. That's the history of humanity. America is unique in that we're not doing that. But we're only 250 years in. We can be foiled economically. We can be beat up around the world. And then the world just goes back to what it's always been. I don't want that world.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at.
I hear you. And actually, I think that's a decent segue because my argument about, you said one of the good things about Trump is that he surrounds himself with smart people. And my interpretation of the people he surrounds himself with and the people he appoints into certain positions is often, again, from my perception, it's people who largely agree with what he wants to do. And when they don't agree with him, he wants them out. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in this next topic because Donald Trump has officially done the impossible. That's right. He's given me no choice but to defend the biggest bank in the country. And if you think I'm happy about it, let's just say I have my federal reservations. Because the Department of Justice is launching an investigation into Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, allegedly because he lied under oath to Congress about the scope of renovations happening on the Federal Reserve's Washington headquarters. And if you fell asleep during that explanation, I don't blame you. But listen to this shot of espresso from Powell himself, who disagrees about the grounds of the investigation, saying, quote, "The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public rather than following the preferences of the president, end quote. Over the years, President Trump has made his opinion of Powell very clear, referring to him publicly as, quote, stupid and a loser, even having his press secretary, and this is true, reveal a note Trump passed to Powell with an arrow pointing at an interest rate next to the words, should be here, written in Sharpie. Forgive me if I'm hesitant to risk the country's entire monetary value at the request of someone who couldn't even get a casino to make money. So yeah, the DOJ is currently investigating Jerome Powell because of renovations that are over budget. Let's just start there. What do you think of that?
Well, spending taxpayer dollars, there's a responsibility to that. And if he's done it by mistake, there's two ways of looking at things. People make a mistake of the head, where they purposely do things wrong, and then people make a mistake of the heart. They were trying to do the right thing, and it went bad. I come from a career in law enforcement. Our cops, you're out there, and you're trying to do the right thing, and it's inevitable in law enforcement world that things go sideways. So you have training, you have policy, you have law, and you're trying to do the right thing, and you make a decision, and it goes the wrong way. Well, were you making a decision of the head to purposely do it wrong, or was it of the heart and it went wrong, right? When I look at this, I think there's a lot bundled in here when we're talking about this particular situation. Financially, Trump is a financial guy, and I like the little dig you throw me. I couldn't even make money with a casino. Well, you know what? A business is a business. Some businesses win, some businesses lose. There's a lot to it as opposed to just he had six failures. Well, he had 20 things that went great. He's amazing business things and some bad ones. When you look at that and you say, why did this guy not bring the interest rates down when it was clear all the indicators that we've historically used to drop them, he wouldn't drop them. So it gave the indication that he was politically trying to be anti-Trump, Trump the range. I'm not doing anything to help Trump. I don't care what the numbers say. I'm not going to do it. And how did that help you and me, the American citizens, right? So now he's building this building. All right. If he made a mistake, he undervalued the cost of the steel or the sheetrock or the labor, and it went over, that should be easy to show. If he did it on purpose to hide money, to move money, that's why we need to do the investigation. And I find it funny that our friends on the left weaponize the Department of Justice. It's undeniable what they did multiple times to try and get Trump in and out of office. And the investigations were scam investigations. You could see evidence was lost. They didn't talk to the right people. Unbelievable. Here, let's do the investigation. If the guy did nothing wrong, then President Joe would say, hey, I apologize for making it look like you were doing something wrong. Our investigation shows you didn't do anything wrong. But if he did do something wrong, then he has to be held to account, just like you and I have to be held to account. Pretty soon we're going to file taxes. And if you do something wrong, you're going to be held to account.
Don't presume I'm going to file taxes. I'm just kidding. The IRS, if you're listening, I'm just kidding. I agree with you to an extent. First of all, I believe that the DOJ's investigations into DJT, I just realized DOJ, DJT, into Donald Trump I believe they were warranted. Obviously, that's a discussion for another time. I do think that this is odd about. It feels like something that very easily could have been a letter or a conversation, and maybe it was, but it also feels like it isn't really about the cost of the buildings. It's about the fact that he lied under oath to Congress, right?
Yes.
So, or allegedly, that's the point that they're trying to get at. It seems like such an odd thing to try to stick to him, and it, like you said, it feels like a very easy thing to prove, if he has an estimate from contractors from, 2 years ago or whenever they started these renovations that says one thing, it seems like an easy thing to be able to provide. I would love to see an interview with Jerome Powell talk about why he believes that it's about the interest rate specifically, if he had private conversations with Donald Trump about something or whatever. also have to push back on, and I want clarification from you on this, because from my perspective, and I did a lot of digging on this, Jerome Powell was doing, as far as interest rates go, the exact same strategies that we have seen worked in the past, where you have these, and granted, we are in a very odd time that we haven't really seen before as far as inflation and unemployment. Usually inflation is up, unemployment is down, or the opposite, and you adjust the interest rates accordingly to bring one of those down and the other one up. But right now they're kind of both, they're not high, but they're kind of up, and they're lowering the interest rates incrementally. They've come down over the past year, like, I don't know, 2% or something like that. They do them in small amounts, because if you do it all at once, that's usually how inflation gets super jacked up. And so they're trying to do it incrementally over time, which I have some examples here, including Arthur Burns, who in the 70s, he was good friends with Richard Nixon, and he lowered interest rates to help Nixon get elected. And when he did that and did it abruptly, in 1 year, they saw an inflation rate of 13%, which is wild. And in fact, on the flip side of that, Paul Volcker, who was the chair of the Fed under Jimmy Carter, he raised interest rates up to 20%, which basically saved the economy at the time. And a lot of people had a lot of problems with that, but in the end, it ended up being the right thing to do. So to me, the perception of like first of all, it's an independent company. So like we shouldn't even, an independent organization. So we shouldn't even really be debating like, well, is it the right thing to do? Is it not? It's like, at the end of the day, that's not even what this is about. This is about, did he know it was going to cost $700 million more than it has, which by the way is 30% over the course of multiple years. I will just say, and it is sort of a non sequitur, but I will just add that the ballroom, which isn't taxpayer money, and I'm aware of that, but the cost of that has doubled over the past 6 months. So like, we know that anyone who's done any renovations on a house knows that the guy comes in and is like, oh, it'll be $50 and a ham sandwich. And then by the end, you're, maxing out credit cards. They said they found a bunch of asbestos. What else was in there? Lead. There are rules about how tall buildings can be in DC. So they have to build into the ground. Like they can't build up, they have to add rooms below, which you're going to run into a bunch of stuff doing that, So it seems pretty open and shut to me. I mean, I guess we'll see where this goes, but what are your thoughts on all that?
Absolutely. They tell you when you're around your house and your wife says, "Oh, could you just change that fixture?" The minute you open that fixture up, you're going to have to replace the sheetrock and pull the wires.
Yeah, kick the mice out because they're not paying rent.
And it costs you more money.
Yeah.
Is this potentially absolutely legitimate? Yes, you're right. Look at the price of 2x4s went up during the COVID thing, right? So I get it, and that's all true. I also think we have to realize that human nature, whether we like it or not, and to say that they're an independent agency, that would be great if they were but they're showing indications that they were doing political things. I think it's very hard to expect anyone in this climate to not say and do things political. I think this is not normal times. This is not George W. Bush, that he's a conservative, but, not so much. And Barack Obama, he's a liberal, although he was very far to the left.
I would argue, not left enough for me, I will say. He ran as basically a socialist, and then he was kind of
and then he moderated, right? Yeah. He did what most of our politicians do. They're lukewarm, right? Yeah. And what's the Bible say? If you're lukewarm, spit you out of my mouth, right? Yeah. You want strength one way or another. So when I see that, I go, is it possible that there's a political element on his side that he was not going to help Trump? And the numbers are different. The world has changed. So the paradigms we saw before have changed a little bit. Now, financial numbers and everything stay the same, but the way they work out, I think, can be different over time. We're in a different world than we've ever been before, right? The different industries we have. And is it possible that at this point, there's a little politics on the other side that, you know what, you did it to us, and now we're going to do it to you. Now, I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's human nature. And when it was the other side, people coming up with things that were absolutely absurd. The one guy gets raided, they go through his wife's underwear drawer, and the other guy has boxes of stuff sitting around. It was no big deal.
Okay, I have to push back on that, though, because they did give Trump a lot of, they went to Biden, they gave them both the same courtesy of saying, hey, you have these, give them back. And Biden was like, okay, here they are. Mm-hmm. And with Trump, he was like, no.
Well, I think there's some room in there of what presidential documents are, what he was allowed to keep. The FBI was there. They told him to put a different lock on the door, and he did.
Sure.
So this was an argument that was politically used to jam him and make him look bad. They go to his house. They raid. How many times have they indicted a former president or president? Never. He got indicted 4 times over things that have been overturned now. Cases are falling apart because we see that they were not correct. There could have been something in each one of them, but not enough to indict
He was
a
found
president.
guilty on several felonies, but other than that,
You know what? I don't know about that.
Okay.
But I think you can twist the law, and this is what I think exactly what you're saying goes on. You and I have a difference of opinion, but I haven't come after you.
Not yet.
If I did come after you because I got the power and then you got the power,
when you're president,
there's going to be tendency for you to go, maybe, let's look into it.
Sure.
So I think what we're going to do is an investigation, and no one should be against an investigation. Now, you can scream and holler and say, well, it's not a fair investigation. Well, we didn't seem to care about that for the last 7, 8, or 9, or 10 years. We didn't care about fair. We cared about, hey, we got the power, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So let's do the investigation. And if it turns out the guy did nothing wrong, that 2x4s just cost 10 times as much as they did before, well, that's what happened. And then you move on. But if there's smoke, you should check and see if there's fire. But you should do a legitimate investigation.
Again, though,
100%.
this investigation is not because of it. They're not going to be investigating. First of all, his actions, which again, you might be aware of this, but for people listening, the chair doesn't technically, on paper, have that much power. He has about 1/12 of the power of the board of governors, or is that only the 7? I'm looking. Oh, the Federal Open Market Committee. So there's the board of governors, which are like the most important in that committee, which is 7 people, and they all vote. There's 12 people who all chat about what they're going to do. He's one of those 12 people. And granted, he's the chair, but all that really means is that people listen to him. He is the person that people look to, and he might be more respected than other people. He's also up. His position is up in May. So I'm also I'm not sure what this is actually. It doesn't seem to be about interest rates. It doesn't seem to be about his actions, because again, his actions, he only had 1/12 of the power. So what it seems to be about is just like, did you lie to Congress about your renovations, which feels very odd to me.
Right. Now, what do you have as someone who's done investigations? What do you find in an investigation? It looks on its face like there's nothing here. It's a building and it costs more money. But then you don't know what text messages there are. You don't know what contractors have been caught up in something and came forward and said, you know what, we shuffled money off to this person because if we didn't get the job. You start to find all those things. And then I go in and I testify, they were on the up and up, I pay everything. And it turned out you didn't. And that's why you investigate, because just what you see on the face doesn't mean that's what exactly happened. So do I think there could be a little payback? Of course, it seems like that might be part of it. But if there's nothing there, there's nothing there.
Sure.
If there is something there, then they have to be held accountable.
And I won't read them now, but many, many Republicans have come out and said, there's no chance that Jerome Powell is a criminal. There's no chance that he lied under oath. There's no chance that he did this intentionally. And like you said, we'll see.
Right. And my final thought on that is, whether you're Republican, a Democrat, or conservative, or liberal, people will speak to things on what helps them. Yeah. So we have lots and lots of people on the right and on the left that don't like Donald Trump. And this Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. I thought it was just a thing to say. It is absolutely real. And I think people on the right are also, they got good, cushy lives. And, this guy's rocking the boat. So if I can throw a dart at him here and there, why don't we line up as Republicans like they do on the left? On the left, they circle the wagon. It doesn't matter what the person did.
As a democratic socialist, I disagree with you hard.
Well, it's been my experience to see them.
Sure.
You hear the same talking points. They rattle off the exact same words on every news broadcast. Every politician says the same thing. The Republicans don't do that. We're in a circular firing squad. We dying to jump forward and say, I don't agree. I wouldn't do that. Get them, right? The Democrats don't do that.
Yeah.
So we're going to find out as we go down the road where this is all going to play out.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, this has been the very first episode of Perspective Exchange. I am Andrew Dunn. This is my co-host, Joe Pangaro. And thanks for listening. Do you have anything you want to add?
I'm glad everybody's out there. This is a chance for the two sides to actually talk, right? To have an opinion, but to back up your opinion. So remember, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
And remember, be a part of the problem, not part of the solution, kids. Go out there. Have fun.